The emergency line rings once, then again. No one answers. Monitors hum. A trauma bay fills with voices that talk over each other, not to each other. Blood is pooling faster than the suction can clear it. A patient is crashing, and the only person who saw it coming is standing by the wall, in scrubs that mark her as invisible. She called the chief surgeon minutes ago. She was ignored. Now alarms begin to sound, not from machines, but from the room itself. And as the ER slips toward a mistake it will not survive, the night nurse steps forward. Quietly. Precisely. They thought she was overreacting. They were wrong. The hospital after midnight is a different place. Not quieter, just stripped down to essentials. The fluorescent lights never dim, but their edges soften. Conversations drop into murmurs. Shoes move faster, voices slower. Everyone who is here has already decided not to leave until morning. The night nurse signs in without ceremony. Her badge is scuffed from years of use, name printed in small, practical letters. No titles beyond RN, no indicators of seniority. She ties her hair back, checks the assignment board, and takes the section no one argues over. 2 trauma bays and an overflow bed near radiology. She does not complain, she never does. The ER runs on hierarchy. Attendings give orders. Residents interpret them, nurses execute. That structure is comfort. On nights like this, comfort matters more than speed. She moves through her checks methodically. 4 lines secure. Oxygen set. Medications logged twice. She notices things others don't because she has time to notice them. Not because her workload is lighter, but because she creates the space. In Trauma Bay 3, a patient breathes too fast for someone who is supposed to be stabilizing. The monitor doesn't alarm. The numbers are still acceptable. But the rhythm is wrong. She adjusts the pillow by an inch, just enough to ease the angle of the neck. The breathing slows. No one sees it happen. Across the unit, a junior resident jokes quietly with a tech about getting through the shift. The charge nurse reviews staffing shortages on her tablet. The chief surgeon is not in the building. He never is overnight unless called. The night nurse documents everything she touches. Her handwriting is precise, unemotional, time-stamped. She has learned that precision protects you more than confidence ever will. Another patient arrives with abdominal pain, flagged low priority. She listens as the intake nurse recites the symptoms. The words are ordinary, the cadence is not. She asks one additional question casually, as if curious rather than concerned. The answer makes her pause for half a second longer than necessary. She notes it. Nothing more. Experience teaches restraint. Say too much too early, and you become noise. Say nothing, and you become invisible. She has learned to live in the narrow space between. A monitor beeps somewhere down the hall. Someone silences it. The ER breathes in, breathes out. She checks the clock. It is just past 1 a.m. This is the hour when mistakes begin. Not because people are careless, but because they are tired, and tired people trust patterns more than in instincts. She reviews a chart again. Then again, the numbers are still within range. The room still looks calm. No alarms, no urgency. But something is wrong. She picks up the phone and dials the extension she knows by memory. Not to panic, not to argue, just to report what she is seeing. The line rings. Once, twice. No answer. She sets the receiver down gently as if it might overhear her thoughts. Around her, the ER continues exactly as it has all night, confident, orderly, unaware. She returns to her station and keeps working, for now. The phone does not ring back. That is not unusual. Overnight calls are filtered through layers of judgment before they reach anyone with real authority. The system assumes that if something truly critical happens, it will announce itself loudly. The night nurse knows better. She stands at the central workstation, scrolling through labs as they populate one by one. The values drift. Not sharply enough to trigger alarms, but consistently enough to form a line. She traces it with her eyes, comparing timestamps, cross-referencing vitals. The pattern is subtle. It would not concern someone seeing it for the first time. She has seen it before. In Trauma Bay 3, the patient's skin tone has changed almost imperceptibly. not pale, not cyanotic, something in between. She checks capillary refill without drawing attention. Slightly delayed, she adjusts the 4% rate by a fraction, documents the change, waits. The resident assigned to the bay enters with a coffee he does not need. He glances at the monitor, nods to himself, and starts to leave. "Can I show you something?" she asks. Her voice is neutral, no urgency, no challenge. He pauses, more out of politeness than interest. She points, not at the monitor, but at the chart, at the timing, at the progression. She does not name a diagnosis. She does not speculate. She simply shows him the line. He frowns, shrugs. "Looks okay for now," he says. "We'll keep an eye on it." He means it kindly. That almost makes it worse. She nods and steps back. The interaction ends exactly where it began. Her concern is now officially acknowledged, and therefore safely ignored. She waits 20 minutes before calling again. This time she frames it differently. She reports a potential trend, mentions the incoming abdominal pain case, notes a similarity in onset timing. She keeps her tone professional, unremarkable. She is careful not to sound certain. The chief surgeon's voicemail answers. She leaves a message. Brief, clear, no emotion. She states the facts and requests guidance, then she hangs up. In the ER, the resident orders a routine imaging study. The radiology queue is long tonight. Everyone knows that. No one pushes unless they have to. The night nurse walks with the patient to the scanner. She watches the tech position the body. She notices how the patient winces, not at the movement, but at the pause before it. Anticipation, not pain. She files that away. Back in the bay, the monitor alarms once. Just once, a short, sharp sound. The resident silences it without looking. "Artifact," he says. She does not contradict him. Instead, she pulls the old chart from the system, one she remembers because it ended badly. The symptoms were almost identical. The delay was the difference. She dials the phone a third time. This time, the chief surgeon answers. He sounds tired, controlled, already moving on to the next thought before she finishes the first sentence. She speaks anyway, calmly, efficiently. She lays out the trend, the similarities, the risk of waiting. There is a pause on the line. "Let the resident handle it," he says. "Call me if it changes." The line goes dead. Around her, nothing changes. The ER continues its rhythm. Orders are placed, charts are updated. The night moves forward as if guided by a script written long before she arrived. She stands still for a moment longer than necessary. Then she goes back to work. But she changes where she stands. She positions herself closer to Trauma Bay 3. She rechecks the crash cart without being asked. She quietly asks a tech to stay nearby just in case. No announcements, no defiance, only preparation. The call did not matter. The information did. The first sign is not dramatic. It is a delay. A medication that should take effect within minutes does not. The dosage is correct. The route is correct. The chart confirms no allergies, no contraindications. On paper, everything is working. In the body, it is not. The night nurse notices before the resident does. She notices because she is watching the patient, not the monitor. The rise and fall of the chest is uneven now, subtle but consistent. She places 2 fingers at the wrist, counts without looking at the clock. Too fast, then too slow. She documents the discrepancy carefully, knowing it will matter later, even if it does not matter now. In the neighboring bay, the abdominal pain patient shifts restlessly. His vitals remain stable. His pain score stays the same, but his eyes keep moving to the door. He is listening for something he cannot name. She asks him a simple question while adjusting the blood pressure cuff. "Does it feel better when you sit up or lie flat?" He hesitates before answering. The hesitation tells her more than the words. She nods as if satisfied and moves on. The ER remains convinced it has time. A resident laughs quietly at something on his phone. A tech restocks gloves. Somewhere a pager vibrates and is ignored. The night nurse continues to make small changes that buy minutes. Repositioning a patient, increasing monitoring frequency, spacing medications with intention. None of it is ordered. All of it is within her scope. She catches the charge nurse's eye and says nothing. The charge nurse glances at the board, then back at her. A silent acknowledgement passes between them. Not agreement, not alarm, awareness. The lab results return. They are borderline. Not alarming enough to force action, exactly the kind of results that allow a team to weight itself into a corner. She prints them anyway and highlights 2 numbers with a pen. Not aggressively, just enough to draw attention if someone happens to look. The resident does not. Instead, he updates the plan. Observe. Reassess in an hour. An hour is a long time. The night nurse recalculates silently. She adjusts again, oxygen up by a fraction, fluids time to overlap rather than follow. She requests a second 4-line for access, a phrase no one questions. The patient in Trauma Bay 3 looks at her now when she enters. His voice is weak but steady. "Am I okay?" he asks. She meets his eyes. She does not reassure him falsely. She does not alarm him. "We're watching you closely," she says. "It is the truth." She glances at the clock. 2:17 a.m. This is the window, not the crisis yet, but the last clean stretch before it arrives. She considers calling again. She considers how it will sound. A nurse insisting without proof, a disruption to hierarchy, a problem without a name. She decides against it. Instead, she prepares. She positions equipment where it can be reached without crossing the room. She checks the oxygen backup. She quietly briefs a tech on where to stand if things move fast. No one asks why. They trust her without realizing they are doing it. In the abdominal pain bay, the patient groans softly, not louder, deeper. The sound catches her attention immediately. She crosses the room and checks his abdomen again. It is firmer than before. She straightens slowly. The indicators are no longer subtle. They are simply being ignored. The call comes through dispatch without urgency. Male patient, late 30s, collapse at home. Stable vitals en route. No trauma reported. The words are familiar, reassuring. The kind of handoff that allows an ER to stay relaxed. The night nurse stops what she is doing. She listens to the paramedic's cadence through the speaker, not the content. There is a pause where there should not be one. A correction mid-sentence. The subtle shift of someone choosing words carefully. She moves toward the empty trauma bay before anyone assigns it. The gurney arrives quietly. No sirens, no rush. The patient is conscious, breathing on his own. His face is flushed, not pale. His eyes are unfocused in a way that suggests effort, not confusion. The paramedic gives a report. Routine, too routine. The night nurse asks one question, phrased as confirmation. "Any sudden pain before the collapse?" The paramedic hesitates, then nods. Said it felt tight, in the middle. The resident waves it off. "Probably vasovagal," he says, already moving toward the computer. "We'll get labs." The nurse does not argue. She helps transfer the patient, noting how carefully the paramedic supports the torso. Experience recognizes experience. As she attaches the monitors, the numbers settle into a deceptive calm. Blood pressure is acceptable. Heart rate elevated but not critical. Oxygen saturation is fine. The room relaxes. She does not. She watches the patient's hands. They are clenched, then released, then clench again. Not from pain, but from pressure. She increases monitoring frequency without announcing it. In Trauma Bay 3, the first patient's breathing changes again. Shallow now. Faster. The alarm does not sound because the settings were never adjusted for nuance. She adjusts them. The alarm chirps once, softly. The resident silences it. "Let's not overreact," he says, not unkindly. She steps back. The new arrival begins to sweat. Not heavily, just enough to bead along the hairline. The nurse wipes it away and feels the skin, cooler than it should be. She checks the pupils, equal, reactive, but slow. She asks for an EKG. The resident agrees, distracted. The machine prints the strip. She reads it before anyone else touches the paper. There is a deviation, small, easy to rationalize away. She folds the strip once and places it on the counter, angled toward the resident. He glances at it, frowns, shrugs. "We'll watch it," he says. Watching is not enough. Across the ER, the abdominal pain patient groans again. This time louder. The nurse moves quickly, presses gently, and feels resistance where there was none before. His face tightens, not in pain but in fear. She looks up and meets the charge nurse's eyes. "Can you stay close tonight?" she asks. The charge nurse studies her face for a moment, then nods. No questions. The crisis has arrived, but it has not announced itself. It has slipped into the ER under the cover of normalcy, counting on protocol to protect it. The night nurse stands between three patients whose conditions are drifting in the same direction. She does not raise her voice. She does not call again. She positions herself where she can see all three bays, and she waits. The first thing to break is not a bone or a vessel. It is patience. The resident returns to Trauma Bay 3 with a fresh set of orders, routine adjustments, minor increases, nothing that acknowledges change. He speaks quickly, confident in the language of protocol. The nurse listens without interrupting, then carries out the orders exactly as written. And then she does one more thing. She checks the patient's neck veins. The distension is subtle, only visible from a certain angle. She shifts the overhead light slightly and confirms it. She feels the room is narrow. "Can we pause for a second?" she asks. The resident exhales, already tired of the night. "What is it?" She shows him the trend again, this time with the neck finding, the delayed response to medication, the breathing pattern that no longer matches the numbers. "This isn't lining up," she says. Still calm, still measured. He looks. He really looks this time. The frown deepens. He considers calling someone, then glances at the clock. "Let's not jump," he says. "I'll check with the attending in the morning." Morning is too far away. In the adjacent bay, the new arrival shifts and grips the rails. His voice rises slightly when he speaks. "Something's wrong," he says. The resident reassures him with practiced ease and steps out. The nurse does not follow. She checks the blood pressure again. It has dropped, not sharply but enough. She checks it manually to be sure. The cuff confirms what the monitor tried to soften. She looks up as the charge nurse enters. "Any updates?" the charge nurse asks. The nurse answers carefully. 3 patients, similar timing, different presentations. The charge nurse's expression tightens. "That's not good," she says quietly. The resident overhears and turns back. "They're not connected," he says. "Let's not create patterns where there aren't any." The nurse meets his eyes. She does not argue the connection. She challenges the assumption. "Then explain why they're all trending the same way," she says. The room stills. This is the fracture, small but visible. A nurse pressing back against a decision that belongs to someone else. The resident stiffens. "I said we'll watch it." The nurse nods once. Then she does something he does not expect. She calls for a rapid response nurse to stand by. The resident steps forward. "That's unnecessary." "Then they won't be needed," she replies. Her tone does not change, but the implication does. The charge nurse does not countermand her. In Trauma Bay 3, the patient coughs, a wet, ineffective sound. His oxygen saturation dips, then recovers. The monitor finally alarms, louder this time. No one silences it immediately. The resident looks at the numbers, then back at the nurse. "What do you think is happening?" he asks. She does not name it. She answers with action. She raises the head of the bed. She adjusts oxygen delivery. She asks for a portable ultrasound, not stat, just available. The resident hesitates, then nods. The hierarchy bends, just slightly. In the bay down the hall, the abdominal pain patient's pressure drops again. The nurse catches it because she is already there. She does not call out. She simply moves. The ER is no longer calm. It is alert without knowing why. The first fracture has opened, and through it, the night nurse steps forward. The ER does not erupt. It tightens. Voices lower. Movements become deliberate. The kind of focus that appears just before panic, if panic is going to come at all. The night nurse does not raise an alarm. She understands alarms draw attention but also invite resistance. Instead, she contains. She stationed a tech at the foot of Trauma Bay 3, close enough to act, far enough not to crowd. She asks for blood to be cross-matched, not because it is needed yet, but because delay later would be fatal. She phrases it as preparation. No one argues with preparation. The portable ultrasound arrives. The resident holds the probe, uncertain. The nurse positions the patient's arm, adjusts the angle of the bed, dims the lights by a fraction. The image appears. There is hesitation, not confusion, recognition without context. "What am I looking at?" the resident asks. The nurse points once. She does not explain. He sees it himself. His jaw tightens. In the adjacent bay, the new arrival's heart rate spikes. The monitor alarms again. This time no one silences it. The nurse glances over, calculates distance and time, then delegates. "Stay with him," she tells the charge nurse. "Call me if the pressure drops again." The charge nurse nods and follows the instruction without comment. The nurse returns to Trauma Bay 3 and adjusts the flow. She keeps her movements economical. Nothing wasted, nothing hurried. The resident steps back and pulls out his phone. "Calling the attending," he says. She does not react. The call is late, but necessary. She continues working as if it had already happened. The attending does not answer. The resident swears under his breath. The nurse checks the patient's pupils again. They are slower now. The window is closing. She makes a decision. She orders the room prepared for a procedure that has not been approved. Not loudly, not officially. She simply begins setting the conditions so that when permission arrives, nothing will slow it down. The tech follows her lead. So does the respiratory therapist, drawn by tone rather than command. Across the ER, the abdominal pain patient cries out. The sound is sharp now. The nurse hears it and adjusts again. Fluid bolus increased, labs expedited. She is holding 3 lines at once. Not with speed, but with control. The resident watches her, then stops trying to keep up verbally. He mirrors her actions instead. "Why are you so sure?" he asks quietly. She does not answer the question he asked. "I've seen what happens when we wait," she says. "That is all." The attending finally calls back. The resident speaks quickly, compressing the situation into fragments. He hands the phone to the nurse without thinking. She takes it. Her voice on the line is calm, precise. She does not argue. She reports what is happening, not what she believes. There is a pause. "Do not proceed without me," the attendant says. She listens, then replies, "Understood." She hands the phone back and continues preparing anyway. This is containment, not defiance, no command, buying time, shaping the battlefield so that when authority arrives, it arrives into order, not chaos. The ER feels it now. The shift, the quiet gravity around one nurse who is no longer blending into the background. No one names it, they simply follow. The first patient decompensates without warning. One moment the monitor holds. The next, it drops into a rhythm that demands attention. Not a crash, but a slide. The kind that accelerates once it starts. The nurse is already at the bedside. She calls for medications in a steady voice, not louder than before. The resident responds immediately. The respiratory therapist steps in without being asked. The room fills, but it does not crowd. The patient gasps. Once, then again. The nurse adjusts the mask seal, then stops. She switches strategies mid-motion, sensing resistance before the monitor confirms it. She signals for suction. The tech is already there. The attending is still 10 minutes away. In the second bay, the new arrival's blood pressure drops sharply. Not borderline now. The charge nurse calls out once, sharp and controlled. "I've got it," the night nurse says, without turning. She moves between bays with purpose, leaving instructions behind her like markers. Fluids increased, medications drawn, lines checked twice. The ER stretches thin. A third alarm sounds from the abdominal pain patient. His heart rate spikes, then stutters. He clutches his abdomen and curls inward. The nurse stops. 3 patients, 1 nurse, 1 crisis revealing itself through different bodies. She closes her eyes for half a second, not in prayer, but calculation. She prioritizes. Page surgery again, she tells the resident. Not attending. Anyone. The resident hesitates. They'll push back. Then let them, she replies. She kneels beside the abdominal pain patient and checks for rigidity again. It is pronounced now. The man's face is gray. She orders imaging without waiting for approval. The tech looks to the resident. The resident nods. Authority has shifted without announcement. The nurse returns to Trauma Bay 3 just as the patient's pressure drops further. She adjusts medication timing, not dosage. The effect is immediate. The monitor stabilizes slightly. Not enough, but enough. She buys minutes. The attending calls back. This time his voice is sharper. "What's going on down there?" The resident starts to answer. The nurse takes the phone again, calmly. "We have 3 patients with overlapping deterioration," she says. "Different presentations, same trajectory. We're past observations." Silence. "Who is this?" the attending asks. "A nurse on your night shift," she replies. Another pause, longer this time. "I'm on my way," he says. She hands the phone back. In the hallway, a security guard appears, drawn by the tension. The nurse glances at him and shakes her head slightly. Not yet. The ER is no longer functioning on routine. It is operating on trust. Trust placed in someone who has not claimed authority, but has earned it through restraint. The cost begins to show. The nurse's hands tremble slightly as she resets a line. Fatigue presses in, sharp and sudden. She ignores it. The abdominal pain patient is rushed to imaging. The new arrival's oxygen requirement increases. Trauma Bay 3 holds, but barely. The escalation is complete. There is no going back to normal. Only forward through whatever this becomes. The imaging comes back faster than it should. The tech does not speak when he hands the report to the resident. He does not need to. The resident's face changes as he reads, then stills completely. He looks up at the night nurse. "This is bad," he says. She already knows. The abdominal pain patient needs surgery now. Not soon, not after consults. Now. Every minute past this point compounds the damage. The problem is not the decision. The problem is permission. The attending is still minutes away. Surgery will demand a sign-off. The system is designed to protect itself from haste, from liability, from individuals who act alone. The patient does not have that time. The nurse steps into the bay and kneels beside the gurney. The man's eyes search her face, wide and unfocused. "Am I dying?" he asks. She does not lie. "You're very sick," she says, "but we can help you." She squeezes his hand once firmly. not for comfort, for grounding. Behind her, the resident paces. If we move him without clearance, he won't survive the weight, she replies. The words land heavily, not dramatic. Final. She feels the weight of the choice settle in her chest. She understands the cost of acting without cover, reports, hearings, careers that end quietly without ceremony. She also understands the cost of restraint. She looks at the clock, calculates again. Prep him, she says. The resident freezes. We have everything we need to keep him alive until surgery takes him, she says. If we wait, there will be nothing left to save. The charge nurse steps closer. If this goes wrong, I'll take responsibility, the night nurse says. She does not raise her voice, she does not posture. She simply claims the weight. The resident studies her face, not for confidence, for truth. He nods. The decision ripples outward. The tech moves. The respiratory therapist prepares. The gurney is repositioned. The OR is notified with careful language that avoids accusations and certainty. In Trauma Bay 3, the first patient destabilizes again. The nurse splits her focus, delegating with precision. She assigns tasks that assume competence, not compliance. People rise to it. The new arrival's condition worsens, but holds within the narrow margin she has created. She checks on him briefly, makes one adjustment, and moves on. This is the sacrifice. She cannot be everywhere. She must choose where her presence matters most. She chooses the patient who will not survive delay. The abdominal pain patient is moved, lines secure, oxygen steady. The nurse walks beside the gurney, one hand on the rail, eyes never leaving his face. The attending arrives just as the elevator doors close. He sees her through the glass. For a moment they lock eyes. No accusation, no approval, just recognition. She rides the elevator down without speaking. Above them, the ER absorbs the gap she has left behind, held together by the momentum she created. The choice has been made. The cost will come later. The operating suite is already awake, not fully staffed, just alert enough to respond when urgency arrives without warning. The night nurse pushes the gurney through the doors and into a space that expects surgeons, not her. No one stops her. That alone is a change. She gives a report quickly. Not long explanations, not theories. Facts in sequence, timings, responses to interventions, what failed, what barely held. The anesthesiologist listens closely, asks one question. She answers without hesitation. He nods once. In the ER upstairs, the attending takes over Trauma Bay 3 and immediately feels the tension she left behind. The patient is alive, but only because the margins are razor thin. He scans the room and sees the preparations already in place. He does not ask who ordered them. He asks how long they have been ready. 40 minutes, the resident says. The attending's eyes flicker. He understands what that means. Back in pre-op, the abdominal pain patient begins to crash again. Blood pressure falling, heart rate climbing. The room tightens around him. The night nurse adjusts positioning, timing, flow. She anticipates the drop before it completes. Her movements are efficient, unhurried, exact. The anesthesiologist watches her hands. "Where did you train?" he asks. She does not answer directly. "I've seen this before," she says. "That is enough." The surgeon on call arrives, skimming the imaging. His posture changes as he takes it in. No hesitation now, no debate. "Let's go," he says. The night nurse steps back as the sterile field is established. She does not scrub in. She does not ask to stay. She knows where her role ends. But before she leaves, she notices something no one else has yet. A small change in the patient's breathing that signals another drop coming fast. She speaks once. 30 seconds, she says. The anesthesiologist looks at the monitor, then at her. He makes the adjustment immediately. The crash never fully arrives. Silence follows, heavy, focused. Upstairs, the ER stabilizes into a new order. The attending moves between bays and realizes that the nurse he dismissed earlier has shaped the night. The residents are working differently, anticipating, positioning, thinking ahead. Not because they were told to, because they were shown. He asks the charge nurse where she is. Downstairs, she replies, with the surgical case. The attending nods slowly. Back in the hallway outside the OR, the night nurse sits on a bench. Her hands are finally still. The tremor has passed, replaced by a deep, quiet fatigue. A hospital administrator walks by and glances at her badge. Read the name. Move on. No recognition. No interruption. Inside the OR, the crisis turns, not because of a dramatic intervention, but because the worst outcome has been denied just long enough. The reversal is complete, not announced, not claimed, simply evident to those paying attention. The surgery takes longer than expected, not because of complications, but because the damage is precise, contained just enough to be repaired, but only if every movement is exact. The surgeon works in silence, broken only by requests that come clipped and measured. The night nurse does not watch the procedure. She watches the clock. She knows what is happening upstairs. The ER will not hold indefinitely without her. Attending can manage one crisis, not three. The margins she created are shrinking by the minute. She stands and returns to the elevator without being told. Back in the ER, the tension has shifted again. Trauma Bay 3 is unstable but holding. The new arrival is worsening in a way that no longer fits benign explanations. The attending is at the bedside when she steps in. He looks up. There is no anger in his face, no defensiveness, only assessment. You moved a patient without clearance, he says. Yes, she replies. Why? She does not reference imaging, or outcomes, or what might have happened, because waiting would have killed him, she says. The attending studies her for a long moment. He glances at the monitors. The preparation is still in place. At the resident, who is no longer unsure. He nods once. All right, he says. Show me what you're seeing. This is the confrontation. Not raised voices. Not discipline. Authority meeting authority. Quietly. She walks him through the room, not verbally but physically. She positions him where to stand, points out what to notice, shows him the timing, the relationships between changes. He sees it. His orders change, faster, more decisive, less defensive. The new arrival's condition reaches its edge. The attending prepares to intubate. He moves confidently, but something is off. The nurse notices immediately. She does not stop him. She adjusts the setup so that when the first attempt fails, the second will not. It fails. The second succeeds. No one comments on the difference. Trauma Bay 3 stabilizes again. This time, it holds. The attending exhales slowly and steps back. He looks at her, not as a nurse, not as a subordinate. Where did you learn to think like this? He asks. She answers honestly. In places where hesitation costs lives. He does not ask her to elaborate. The surgical suite calls with an update. The abdominal pain patient is stable, repair complete, prognosis guarded but hopeful. The ER does not celebrate. There is no moment of release, just a gradual easing like pressure lifting from the chest. The attending makes a decision that will never appear in a report. He does not write her up. He does not commend her publicly. He quietly reroutes authority for the remainder of the shift. Run the floor with me, he says. She nods once. The confrontation ends not with dominance, but alignment. The crisis is over. The cost remains. By the time the sun begins to lighten the windows, the ER has returned to something that resembles order. Not normal. Normal will take longer. But the alarms are fewer. The voices steadier. The stretchers no longer line the halls with unanswered questions. The night nurse finishes charting. Every entry is careful, precise. She records facts, not interpretations, timelines, not conclusions. She knows how records are read later, by people who are not there, looking for certainty where only judgment existed. The attending stands nearby, reviewing his own notes. He does not hover. He does not interfere. When he asks a question, it is specific. When she answers, he listens. The abdominal pain patient is out of surgery and in recovery, still sedated, still fragile, alive. The surgeon passes through the ER briefly, nodding to the attending. Their exchange is quiet, professional. No one seeks her out. That is expected. A hospital administrator arrives early, summoned by the overnight events. He asks about timelines, about protocol deviations. The attending answers most of it himself. When the question of early escalation arises, he pauses. The nurse identified the deterioration early, he says. Appropriate steps were taken. He does not name her. She does not look up. The resident approaches her station, hesitating like someone about to cross a boundary. I didn't see it, he says, at first. She closes the chart and meets his eyes. You weren't supposed to, she replies. Not yet. He nods, absorbing the weight of that without offense. The charge nurse brings 2 cups of coffee and sets one down beside her without comment. It has gone cold. She drinks it anyway. Fatigue settles in fully now. Not dramatic exhaustion, something deeper, the kind that comes after restraint, not action. The attending finishes his notes and stands. There will be questions, he says quietly. About last night. She nods. There always are. They may not like the answers. They don't have to, she replies. He watches her for a moment, then speaks more carefully. You could have asked for recognition. She shakes her head once. That would have changed the night. He does not disagree. A memo is drafted later. It will recommend process review and communication improvements. No names, no conclusions. The system protects itself by smoothing edges. She signs out at the end of the shift like she always does. No ceremony, no pause for acknowledgement. As she removes her badge, the attending looks up. Good work, he says. It is quiet, unrecorded, enough. She leaves the ER as the day staff arrives, unaware of how close the night came to failure. The aftermath is not victory. It is survival. The locker room smells faintly of antiseptic and old detergent. The night nurse changes out of her scrubs slowly, deliberately, as if speed might invite the night to follow her home. Her hands ache now that they are no longer needed. A dull pressure sits behind her eyes. She welcomes it. It means the work is done. In the hallway outside the ER, day shift gathers around the board. Fresh voices, clean energy. They talk about staffing gaps and bed assignments, about a normal day that has not yet learned how fragile it is. She passes them without stopping. No one asks her what happened overnight. No one expects her to explain. The story has already been flattened into checkboxes and summaries, stripped of the moments where everything could have gone wrong. The abdominal surgery patient will be listed as a timely intervention. The deterioration will be called unexpected. The delay will be labeled within acceptable variance. That is how the hospital remembers things. She signs out at the terminal one last time. The system logs her exit with the same indifference it logged her arrival. At the doors, the attending stands with a cup of coffee he has not touched. He watches her approach but does not block her path. They'll forget, he says, not accusingly, just stating facts. She nods. They usually do. He considers saying something else. An offer, perhaps. A question, something that would force clarity. He decides against it. So will I, he says instead. She allows herself the smallest smile, not at the words, but at the understanding behind them. Outside, the morning air is cool. Traffic has already begun to build. The city moves on without pause, unaware of the line it nearly crossed. She walks to her car and sits for a moment before starting the engine. The silence settles around her, heavy but clean. No sirens, no applause, no proof that the night ever mattered. She drives away as the hospital disappears in the rearview mirror, returning to a life where her name carries no weight and her past remains unspoken. That is how it has to be. The night ends not with recognition, but with restraint. Weeks later, the night is quiet again. The ER runs as it always has, efficient, tired, confident in its systems. The incident has been reduced to a case review no one quite remembers volunteering for. Charts were closed, outcomes recorded. The moment passed, the night nurse is back on shift. Same badge, same scrubs, same place by the wall where she can see without being seen. A new resident works Trauma Bay 3 now, younger, careful in a way that suggests someone warned him without telling him why. He double-checks trends. He watches timing more than numbers. He does not know where he learned that. A patient asks for water. The nurse brings it, adjusts the bed, checks the fourth routine. Invisible. At the workstation, the attending scrolls through a chart and pauses. He glances up, finds her across the room, and holds her gaze for a second longer than necessary. He nods. That is all. No files are opened, no credentials reviewed, no past called into question. The hospital does not want the truth. It wants continuity. Some things are easier if they remain unspoken. She passes a framed photograph in the hallway, an old dedication plaque listing names of surgeons and donors. No nurses, there never are. She stops briefly, not to look at the names, but at her reflection in the glass, older than before, not visibly changed, but heavier in ways no one tracks. The abdominal surgery patient is discharged days later. He never learns who made the decision that saved him. He thanks the surgeon. The system accepts gratitude without correction. The night nurse reads the discharge summary in passing and closes the file. Her phone vibrates in her pocket as she walks to her car after another shift. A message with no sender name, just a time, a location, nothing else. She deletes it without responding. Some identities are not reclaimed, they are simply carried. She drives home as the sun begins to rise again. Another night contained, another crisis absorbed without credit. Inside the hospital, a subtle change lingers. Staff speak more carefully overnight. Escalations happen sooner. A few people trust their instincts where they once waited for permission. They do not know why. She does, and that is enough. The call was ignored. The night was not. The story ends the way it began, quietly.